It doesn't get any better than this, does it? Two bigots out here discussing women. Bigots. One has never dated a woman. The other, over here, Tucker Carlson, is a, I believe, 56-year-old married Christian guy. Now they're going to have a little conversation here on the problems with modern women, perhaps. Let's see what they have to say.
In a world full of loonies and fools, there remains but one voice of reason. Ghostbusters past, handsome, bold, and refined.
Why aren't people married?
Well, I mean, honestly, it's the women. The women are extremely liberal. No one talks about that. They're increasingly they do, especially after the last election.
Now, bear in mind here that Mr. Nick Fuentes, banned on many platforms only relatively recently, has been unearthed, brought back onto these. May have a bit skewed viewpoint. Feminists hate him. Now, I wonder why that might be the case. He sounds pretty fair and rational here, doesn't he?
A 45-point difference between men and women. The men are extremely conservative, increasingly. The women are extremely liberal.
What are they liberal on? What issues? Like, what does that mean, liberal?
Oh, on
all the convenient ones, mind you. Anything that benefits the women, they like to stand behind.
They're very feminist.
Like, actually?
Extremely feminist, yes.
They don't believe that, do they?
I think they do.
Really?
Absolutely,
How could
yes.
you believe that?
I
If
think
gender roles are a construct, that none of this is inborn, like, you'd have to be an idiot to think that.
they like the idea of it. They like because of course.
And there is that Christian viewpoint from Tucker coming in. The genetic predisposed roles here that everybody likes to talk about. And women now recently have been shooing away and saying it's not true at all. And yet we have the traditional viewpoint where you would say genetics, just the bodily shape and all that, would lend itself to a certain separation of duties, that is. Now, he argues from perhaps more the scientific, biological point of view, where you just, from sheer appearances here, you look and say, okay, this is probably better at that, and this one is probably better at this. And yet, feminists like to debate that a lot. Never in a foot race, though.
I think all women naturally want strong men.
Of course, obviously.
They naturally want a Chad. You know,
Yeah.
they want like a tall, buff guy. But I think they like the idea of none of them want to work.
If you live in a Texas
And
zip code
the
and have 0
bastards bring up a
DUIs in the last
commercial
5
here.
years,
Work either. None of them
That's
actually
what I'm
want
saying.
to work.
No, that's what
but-
I'm saying. Of course. That's of course.
Right.
It's obviously true. It's always been true. Work outside the home.
Right.
They don't have enough work at home. You know, there's
Yes.
a lot to do. But no, I completely agree. So that's why I question, like, they're feminists in what sense?
So they accept this last notion here as if it were a total fact, proven through and through, where if you look at the feminist side, the boss bees and all that sort of critter, you see, they like claiming they enjoy work and they want to have their money. They want to have all these nice things and have a bit of the power. I think a lot of the women just enjoy having that, having the ability to say to most men, I'm better than you. And it helps elevate the status on, gives you something to feel good about, gives you something to harass others on. That's really my stance on it. Is it comes down to people just enjoy having that dynamic. If you look back through history, it's what makes the world go round and round. They love having something to complain about. I mean humanity as a species. You don't have any period of time where everybody's happy. You don't have the men happy when the women are happy, and the vice versa, where the lovely chaps are all praising the women and this and that. They're always at war with one another. It's a fun state to be in.
Yes. And, you know, they like these vague appeals to equality. We want a chance to work and we want respect. And, you know, ultimately, I think the whole political system is just based around women never being accountable for any of their choices. Ultimately, that seems to be that's what abortion is.
Yeah, of course.
Because 99% of abortions are elective. So they say it's an unplanned pregnancy. You had sex out of wedlock with someone you didn't intend to have kids with. So now we have to kill the kids in the womb. And
now, is that true that it is mainly from women not being held accountable? Well, somebody is allowing them to vote back then. You got to go back farther and see why were women allowed to vote? Who has been influencing them? How do they normally vote? What was the purpose of that? Where did it come from?
These no-fault divorce laws. These women get married to guys maybe they never intend to stay with. And then when they're out, they're done. And they want child support and they want half the stuff. And I think a lot of men are looking at women and they're very liberal. They're overweight. They have a very high estimation of themselves. I think that people call it hoflation.
Well, a lot of the Americans have been on the chubby side, of course. I wouldn't know anything about that, being a supreme physical being here. But going back to the history of it now, what I find is that society and cultural changes happen much more swiftly than any sort of legal remedy or change in the legal landscape, the laws and all that. Specifically here, if you go back, say, America in the 1800s or so, now you wonder, what was custody like then? What was the divorce like back then? Because you have people now, it's so recent, so relevant to their lives, that it seems as if it must have always been the way it is now, where it's totally unfair to men and the custody and the laws of divorce and this and that. Everyone says it's totally unfair to the men. Now, if you go back, you have to separate yourself from the current ecosystem here, what we're living in. If you go back, for example, here to the 1800s, and you had the paternal preference, what that means here is that the children, in virtually all divorces, which were much rare back then, mind you, for a variety of reasons, financial and blah, 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 when they got divorced, the children were seen as the father's property, usually so they could help on the land or with the business and that sort of thing. And as the father's property, they were sent to be with him almost exclusively all the time. Okay? And the women didn't really have any rights at all. For the most part, they, as far as couldn't own property and couldn't sue and all that legal type of stuff, was not very favorable to them at all. Now, do you think men at the time thought, oh, wow, this is terrible, women need to have their right? Or do you think the men were perhaps like the modern women who have the advantage, and so they, oh, no, you're overreacting, you don't worry about it, yeah, this is the right thing to do, men know they have the property, they got to use it to work, the women will just squander it and throw it all away? Or do you think the majority of men were saying, you know what, I think it'd be a great idea for us to just relinquish all of bias and favoritism that is bestowed upon us and give it over to the women? Do you think that's the case? Not at all. So then we move through and we go a little farther down the line to how did we get to the system that had such a bias and favoritism towards women in the divorce and the custody and sort of thing? And that brings us to, I'll jump back into the video here in a moment. I got a little tangent here, doing some research on it. Around the middle of the 1800s, somewhere around then, a little bit later perhaps, we had what is introduced as the Tender Years Doctrine. Now this here pretty much guaranteed that mothers would receive custody of the children because it was this idea, this scientific approach, medically sound, that children under the age of 7 were just naturally better off with mothers. Why? Why is that the case, you ask? Because, of course, mothers are much superior and better caregivers. Now, did the women disagree with that? Were they saying, wait a minute, we don't want that. Don't paint us as caregivers. We can be workers and we can be boss bees and powerhouses and go out there and earn everything the same as a man. We're not just staying home looking after the children. Did they say that then? No, they did not. Because once again, when the power is bestowed upon you, It is very difficult to relinquish, especially when you are the party that feels like you have been wronged for so long. So the women get the tender years doctrine, which dictated the laws of custody moving forward in America until actually quite recently here, at least into the 1900s and all that, where the women were pretty much. So you don't have the feminist up in arms over that. Why? Because it is in their favor. So then once women secured that, the custodial rights basically, feminism started to push for more, because once you've got this, it's not good enough. You need more. So they started pushing for the equal wage, equal right to the workforce, to leave the home, to do all this and that. So culturally, they begin getting shoved out of the house, jumping and running and skipping and hopping and screaming with joy and delight, going down to McDonald's and working their day job, flipping burgers or doing that sort of thing. Lovely ambitions they had. So when those go into effect, did they stop for a moment and want to revisit the custodial side of things? No, they did not, because that is secured. They just want more. So that's why I say society pushes along farther, quicker than the actual laws do, for the most part. Virtually all the time you see this, where the cultural shift happens and the laws take a while to match up to it. So you have the women moving into the workforce, they're getting the rights, so now they get the custody, and they are still benefiting from this old notion that women need the property and the assets and things because they were not able to work as much. They didn't have the resources. So that is still being showed bias towards the women, while they're also benefiting on the other side. They are essentially double dipping in here. And when that has gone on long enough that the men were fighting back very heavily against it, that is when the tender years doctrine started being removed, and they replaced it with more the modern concept here of the BIC, the best interest of the children, where the courts will weigh the lifestyle, the household, and this and that, and try to determine who had the better shot, who had the more caregiving role. And that is supposedly about as fair as one can get. But again, there's the legal and then there's the cultural, and they don't always mesh up here. So you have a bit of conflict between what the law may say and what is actually put into practice here. Jumping back in.
Inflation?
Yes, their sense of their own looks and sexual value is very inflated. And so a lot of people are looking at these like frumpy, obnoxious, loudmouth, liberal women who are.
And we put that because of apps, Instagram, this and that, where a woman can slap up basically any sort of picture she wants of herself, and men will glob onto it because they are desperate as anything on the planet. Men will give them compliments all full of lies, falsehoods. They don't mean anything of it, but the chance of getting that willy serviced is enough for them to fabricate all sorts of compliments and favorable messages, which the women receive. And I never understood this at all, how a woman can hear that, can see that, can read that, and somehow believe it is a genuine compliment. How can a woman, knowing that the men are just spamming these out by a lot of these men are literally spamming out hundreds of these a day, going around online, you're so beautiful, you're perfect, love you, oh God, goddess, princess, to such a degree that it boggles my mind how anybody could see that and somehow believe it is a genuine compliment. If they could internalize that and say, boy, I must really be great, look at all these men saying that to me. When they could simply follow the profiles and see these same doofuses are commenting the exact identical messages to whoever knows how many other women. And those women they see, I think even that first lovely lady who received the compliment, if she looked at the other women who the men were commenting to, objectively saw her and thought, wow, he's calling her perfect. She looks a little portly, we'll say, a little bit round around the gut, and like a chipmunk here storing up a couple winters worth of nuts for the hibernation period. And yet the man is calling her perfect. So it boggles my mind how they can see this and feel validated. The amount of sheer delusion that is required for that to take hold and influence your ego, not even just as a personal level, but then that you broadcast outward into the society that you value yourself at. It seems so strange. There's not any other thing that would really matter on. Say you're trading cards or some kind of collectibles, and if everybody's paying the same price for these dirt, ugly, cheap ones, if you can't just hold yours up and say, well, 1,000 other people wanted to buy this for a penny, you're going to pay me $1 million for it now, aren't you? 1,000 other people wanted it for a penny. That's what they're giving you, pennies. And these women are holding themselves up as if all men are offering these top-tier prices. I can't understand it. Men, you're damn fools causing this problem.
Who are also very promiscuous and saying this is not actually appealing at all. And I don't want to start a family with a person
Sounds
like
awful.
this. Yeah, it is.
But if you believe in the patriarchy, as I fervently do, because it's just reality, we didn't choose the system. We were born into a system that is part of nature. Can't get out of it.
Again, very, very biased that most of the feminists would not agree with here. Otherwise, they could not be feminists, I think, by the very definition, by the very actions that they want, by the laws they try to enact. These things are not compatible.
So if you believe that that's true, which it is, then you think that men should lead. And if it's going to be better, men should make it better because that's their job.
Right.
So you don't want to give them a pass, do you? It'd be like it's all the girls suck. So
I don't even blame it on the women because I think that it's the incentive structures. Women are allowed to do this by the legal system, by kind of social norms. Technology is a big part of it. The attention that is available to women. Women go on Instagram and they get attention from thousands of men.
That's what I'm saying here as well. It's the society that grants the permission, the tacit approval of such tactics, and that the law is kind of like a big boulder at the bottom of a hill. Now, it takes a lot to get it moving. It doesn't want to change very much. You just we're plopped down here. So you could have 5 people pushing, 10 people, 20, and it's not moving at all. It takes a large amount of force to get this thing going here.
So it's the
and if you have many of the modern women a bit hefty on the side, if they're sitting on top of that boulder because they don't want it to move now, that also makes things much more difficult. You've seen them at the protests, sitting out there in front of buses. Now, if they can hold up a bus, they can block traffic with their bodies. Imagine what they are doing to that boulder of law.
incentives. But I would say that, because I hear this all the time, people say, well, the men need to step up and be better and lead the women. Easier said than done.
I of course I agree with that.
They're at war with the system, and not even just the system, but also society. Because let's say you find one of these so-called good girls who's Christian and traditional, but through osmosis, wherever you go, she's going to be in society. She's going to be on TikTok. She's going to be on Instagram.
That's why men want the women wrapped back up in the kitchen. Put on those steel walls, no Wi-Fi getting in. Make it the internetless room, just in there slaving away in the kitchen. They want to put it back in the 1800s mindset.
She's going to be talking to other women. And maybe she's one way when you meet and get married, but 10 years down the road, 15 years, 20 years down the road, people change. And I think that women, as kind of the ultimate conformists, the ultimate enforcers of like social norms, I think eventually the pressure from society kind of gets to them. And a lot.
Now, to be fair, they put women here as the changeable ones who are always modifying and being easily influenced by whatever cultural shift is taking place. But have you met a man who is the same as he was 25, 30 years ago? I think that people are always changing around here. But if we look back more recently on culture now, I think what you'll find the men really saying is that the changes that have taken place in the women have spawned forth from society have not been favorable to men. So it is not simply that women change over time. It is that the current boulder being shoved down the hill now of feminism, picking up a lot of speed here, is not good for what most men would enjoy. And that is the primary issue here. Not that the women change, but that they change now, currently, in a system that does not align with men's wishes or desires.
A lot of them will go in
Depends
a
what
different
kind of
direction.
husbands they have. I mean, if there's real leadership at home, I don't know a single happily married woman who's liberal. Not one. I know a lot of married women. I mean, I'm 56.
All the single feminists know loads. In fact, every single woman they know is endlessly happy and filled with joy, living by herself and those 10 little kitty cats, those little fuzzy fur balls that tuck her in at night.
All the women I know are married.
Mm-hmm.
And every happily married woman is non-liberal.
Mm-hmm.
I can't even imagine. There's no category for happily married, middle-aged liberal woman. There hasn't never been one.
Right.
Now, what I think we find here, the root of that issue is that why he's saying liberal women cannot be happy in the marriage is simply because by the sheer nature of being a liberal, it kind of puts them a little more in the driver's seat, where they don't want to cede control, where they don't want to allow someone else to dictate, have the final say, that dreadful idea that feminists shudder away from. It keeps them up at night when they awake in a cold sweat, thinking, God, I decide who does the dishes. I decide where we eat. Okay, where do you want to eat? I don't know. Don't ask me stupid questions. So they don't like the idea of this happening to them. Whereas if you're a more conservative woman, more traditional, she doesn't mind. They kind of enjoy giving up a bit of the reins of life so they can have a more comfortable existence where they don't need to focus. Now, I say this a lot, is that not everyone is cut out to be a boss or a supervisor. Now, everyone says how easy of a job it is. And, anybody you could just stand there with your clipboard and tell me what a bad job I'm doing. Anybody could do that. But the reality is the pressures that go along with it are something fierce, that not everyone is cut out to be in a position of power. So these relationships, in my mind, reflect that, where many women want to be in a position of power, and then the men now are being a bit brainwashed by society and think, oh, yeah, women deserve that. Oh yeah, don't say, don't battle her. Don't say no. Just let her go. Let her decide. So the men step back. They pull away for fear of legal repercussions or peer pressure and that sort of thing. Now the women are in the driver's seat, and that is why you are seeing so many crashing and going off the rails and ramming other cars and all that sort of thing, getting hit up the tailpipe by other drivers. You see this happening simply because not everyone is fit to be in a position of power. They don't know how to steer, they don't know how to control, and especially now with the legal landscape, they are driving a car with an ejector seat. They can either eject, shoot their husband out of there, keep the car, or let's say they're going off a cliff, they fly up, hit the parachute, now they're safe while the husband's going off and crashing down the hill. Now, I don't know how long, this has been going on for quite a while here. I think I'm done with my rant for the moment here. This is a bit longer video. I had many ups and downs, different points about society and this and that. And I think we can all agree I am 100% correct. Nope, I've said it. Everybody knows that. I'll do the Tucker calls. Everybody. That's just true. How could you think otherwise? Yeah, everybody knows that. Yeah, it's true. So, for now, boys and gals, as always, Ghostmas past here. Taking a little break. Now allow me to play myself out on this lovely little song.